Long after the screaming had stopped, when the only sound to be heard was the soft crying of my friends as they waited for the ambulance to arrive, I realized that I was still clutching the lucky penny tightly within my palm. My fingers refused to unfurl from around the tiny copper talisman, as though by sheer will alone I would somehow be able to wind back time and erase the tragedy around me. Was it really only half an hour earlier that Jimmy had picked up the glinting coin from the restaurant's tarmacked car park? "For luck," he had said with a grin, tossing the coin up in the air and deftly catching it with one hand. I smiled back, and then saw the flicker of irritation flash through his pale blue eyes as Matt quipped, "Jimmy, mate, you should have said if you're a little short of cash. No need to go grovelling about on the ground for money." Matt had laughed then and thrown his arm around my shoulder, pulling me close to his side. I thought the darkening expression on Jimmy's face was a natural reaction to Matt's unnecessary comment, which highlighted the differences between their backgrounds. And maybe that was part of it, but it wasn't all of it. There was more. Though, of course, I didn't understand that for a long time. The three of us were standing in the fading sunlight of a warm September evening, waiting for the rest of our group to arrive. Jimmy had already been in the car park when Matt and I had driven in. Matt had made quite a show of circling the empty spaces, looking for just the right spot to park his new acquisition. I guess he was still in that strange honeymoon phase boys have when they're really in love with their cars. I just hoped he'd have the good sense not to gloat about it too much in front of the rest of the group. The new car was shiny, sporty, and expensive. That's as much as I know about cars. He'd been given it by his parents when the exam results had come out. That alone should tell you enough about Matt's family to understand why comments about money sometimes hit a raw nerve with the rest of us. For the most part, Matt was fairly considerate and didn't rub it in too much, but the odd glib remark occasionally slipped under the wire and lit a spark. I hoped he wasn't going to say anything that would ruin what was probably going to be one of the last nights we would all be spending together for quite a while. "You've been at work today, Jimmy?" I asked, knowing full well that he had, but anxious to steer things back onto neutral ground. Jimmy turned and gave me the smile that I swear hadn't changed at all since he was 4 years old. "Yep, this is my last week helping out my uncle. After that, I'm happily handing back the wheelbarrow and the pitchfork. The gardening world and I are about to part company." "Still, look at the bright side. You've got a great tan this summer. You'd not have got that stacking shelves in the supermarket." And it was true. Jimmy's normally fair skin was a soft golden brown, and his forearms were definitely more sinewy and defined from months of outdoor work. Of course, Matt and I were both still sporting fairly decent suntans ourselves from our holiday in France at his parents' villa. That too had been another congratulatory gift, for both of us. Actually, my dad had taken issue with us over the trip. Sure, he liked Matt well enough. He was a fairly familiar fixture around our house, and we had been dating for almost 2 years. But it had still been touch and go whether he'd allow me to go away for a fortnight with Matt's family. Part of it had been the money thing, because, of course, Matt's parents had refused to accept any payment for the trip. The other part, the big part, had been the dad-daughter-boyfriend thing. I guess that's universal with dads, but it seemed even more so in our case, with no mum around to smooth things over. Eventually, Matt and I had managed to persuade him, explaining how everything was going to be all above board, how it was strictly separate bedrooms, and that we'd be with Matt's parents the whole time. Basically, we lied. This chain of thought had made me wonder, and not for the first time, how Dad was going to cope when the time came for me to leave for university at the end of the month. I felt a frown forming, and determinedly pushed the thought away. I'd spent most of the summer struggling with that, and I was not going to ruin the last evening with my friends by worrying over things I couldn't change. 2 cars, both considerably older than Matt's, but no less appreciated by their owners, pulled into the restaurant's car park. The rear door of the small blue car nearest to us flung open, and Sarah ran over in a clatter of improbably high heels. She tottered alarmingly over the uneven surface before